Do you have a need for speed? I mean, real internet speed? Well, everybody does. The number one complaint managed services providers hear from their customers is my internet connection is rotten, or I'm not getting the speed I'm supposed to get, or it's never enough, okay? So when a managed services provider gets a call from their client complaining about their speed, this is the test that they're going to do. So if you don't have a managed services provider, you can do this test yourself to see if you are getting the speed that you ought to be getting. So what we have here in our test is we have a firewall, all right, because every business ought to have a firewall, but your firewall is going to necessarily slow down your transfer speed and your internet speed a little bit, because a good firewall is going to check everything going in and going out to make sure things going in aren't going to hurt you, things going out like your employees aren't going on dangerous websites. So everything has to be inspected, and that takes a little bit of time. But how much time? We're going to show you how to figure that out. So we've got our firewall, and then we've got, of course, our modem, okay, and we're using a Comcast coax. This is a 100 by 50 by 20 connection, not too bad. And then, of course, we also have a failover internet, and this is 4G internet. This is the same sort of wireless internet that you get on your cell phone. Also in our test, we've got a VoIP phone and then a FTP transfer. So we're going to show you how to do a baseline. We're going to unconnect the firewall and do a baseline speed test, and then we're going to check that speed test, because a speed test is just, it's a little burst, a 30-second burst. Hey, almost anybody can give you the speed you think you're buying in a burst. But then what about a sustained FTP huge file transfer upload? How does it perform then? We're going to check that. Okay, so what I showed you was our laptop is hooked up to our phone and is hooked up to our firewall before it gets to the internet. All right, so we're going to, and that's the way you want to test it, the way your business is normally set up. And so it's not unusual for a computer to be plugged into a VoIP phone, plugged into the cable that goes into the wall, your network cable that goes into your local area network, and it feeds back to a patch panel that goes into a firewall before it gets to the modem. So that's how we're going to test it, because that's how people mostly experience slow speeds. So let's go ahead and do our test, and we'll see what we're getting. Okay, it's supposed to be 150 by 20. Okay, a ping of 100. Normally, I mean, I'd like to see a ping of a lot smaller than that. Download, I've seen it a lot higher, and upload, that's not too bad, 16.5 out of 20. So we're going to do it one more time just to check. Okay, our second test is almost about the same, and so the download isn't looking too good. The upload is looking okay. So now what we're going to do is how much of this is caused by the firewall? We don't really know. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the laptop now directly to the internet, bypassing the firewall entirely. Okay, so now I'll show you what I've done is I've connected my my laptop directly to the back of the modem, okay, into one of the LAN ports. And now we're going to redo that speed test. Okay, we got 82, about the same on the ping, a whole lot higher on the download, and then slightly higher on the upload. So we're going to do it one more time just to check. All right, now our second test, ping's about the same. Now the download is way down, and the upload is about what it was before. So we'll have to do this a lot more to conclude whether or not the firewall is having any significant effect. But I'm doing this late at night, okay, but this is a business connection. But there must be a lot of people, residential people at midnight doing a lot of downloads because that is really super slow. All right. But people don't really do downloads as part of their business. What they do is they upload big files a lot of times, or they do other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some of those other things and see how things go. So I've got a very large file here. And I'm going to go ahead and I've got a 25 gig file here. Now I am going to go ahead and start that on an upload. And this is an upload directly to the modem, bypassing the firewall because I want to see what the pure speed is. All right. Now what you see here is a 2.8 MIB. Well, what's a MIB? MIB is a megabyte. Okay. Now, there are there as opposed to megabit, all right? Now, when we were looking at our speed, you can see this is actually megabits, okay? You have to pay attention to whether it's a little b or a big B, all right? Internet service providers, they sell you their speed in megabits per second, all right? But there are 8 bits in a byte, all right? So this is how fast it's going up, but this is the throughput, okay? So you have to divide that other number, actually divide that by 8 because there are 8 bits in a byte, and then you're going to get this. So when you see 2.8 megabytes per second, that doesn't mean that, oh, you're not getting all your speed. So this is the this is a little calculator right up here. So you can take the 2.8 that you're getting, and you can see that we're actually achieving 22.4 megabytes megabits speed. All right, so the Comcast sold us 150 over 20. We're actually achieving 22.4 upload right now, so we're really happy. So again, don't be confused by this little tiny number. It's going up pretty quickly, and so you can see we're going to transfer a 25 gig file in just 2.5 hours, which is not too bad. All right. But we're transferring this without the firewall doing any deep packet inspections. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stop this, and then we're going to hook the firewall back up and see what effect that has. All right, so now what I've done is I've rehooked up my laptop. You can see it daisy chains through my phone. Back of most VoIP phone, it has 2 connections. One that connects to the your switch, and then you can connect your phone, your computer to your phone to the modem, basically through your switch. Now, most older businesses, they only have one network connection per desk. If you've got a more modern wired, then you can go ahead and connect it directly. You have 2 different paths. I'm not really sure. We have a 1 gig port on this phone, so I don't think the phone is slowing it down any. But what we're going to do now is we're going to restart that that connection here. FTP transfer. Okay, so right now we did get 2.8 before, all right, and that was without the firewall in the way. Now you can see we're down to 2.1, 2.2. You have to let it run for a little bit to see where it settles out at. Okay, so it is settling in at, it was 2.0 a second ago, now 2.1, now it's 2.0. All right, I'm gonna okay, now it's back to 2.1. So we've gone from 2.8 and we've lost 0.7. Now if you take 0.7 and you divide it by 2.8, you can see that putting the firewall and the phone in between, we've lost 25% of our throughput. All right, so what you're going to want to do is talk to your managed services provider and confirm that your firewall is set up correctly, because when it does the deep packet inspection, and the firewall will probably reserve a little bit of the bandwidth for VoIP phones, because again, now we've got VoIP phones there. Is that really what you want? Is that set up correctly? Number one, does the deep packet inspection for the UTM, Unified Threat Management, in the firewall keeping all the cooties out so you don't get ransomware, or your employees don't visit porn sites, plus reserving some space for phones? Are you willing to give up 25% of your bandwidth? Is that correct? And are you happy with that? Do you want to look for a different firewall that's a little bit more efficient? So that's the issue there. All right, so to reinforce the learning ports, when you just go directly to the modem, you're going to get unfettered speed, all right? But you have to put in the overhead of a firewall. You have to put in the overhead of other people are using the connections at the same time as you. And if you want to have clean voice phone calls, the firewall is going to hold back a little bit of bandwidth for voice. But if you have something that's got dynamic allocation, things might be a little bit different. The firewalls are kind of, I mean, they're hard guardians of the bandwidth. We're going to show you in a different video how a SD-WAN device is a much more fluid dynamic allocator of bandwidth, and for just a little bit more money, a SD-WAN device is kind of an upgrade over a firewall to a certain degree, and it's a more elegant way of allocating your bandwidth. So again, the other thing is always remember that megabits and megabytes are completely different, and when your FTP shows you, 2.1 megabytes or bits per second, you have to multiply that times 8 to get your speed. So we go up here to the calculator, and 2.1 equals 16.8. So if you're buying a 20 meg upload from Comcast, but you're only getting 16.8, that's not too bad when you consider the fact that you've got your firewall in there. So we're going to do this in another video with the SD-WAN device to see how that changes. And if you're not happy with your setup, again, talk to your managed services provider and find out, are they managing your stuff right? If they don't seem to be managing it right, there are other managed services providers out there that can get you cleaner, more efficient gear, or maybe it just needs to be programmed correctly.